My name is Alexandra Thompson. I'm 62 years old. When my grandfather died last year, he left me his old yoga studio in Chicago. My brother Dylan inherited the family house worth $400,000. My cousins got cash inheritances of $50,000 each. I got a building with cracked floors, a leaking roof, and a rusty pickup truck. My parents' reactions told me everything I needed to know. They were thrilled about Dylan's inheritance. He deserves the house, my father said. He has a family to think about. Dylan has big dreams. But when they saw what I got, my mother just shook her head. Why would Dad leave you that old place? It's falling apart. You're responsible anyway, so you don't need much. It was the same thing I'd heard my whole life. Dylan was the son with dreams, I was the daughter who didn't need much. But I understood what my grandfather was really doing. While Dylan was building his law career and everyone else was too busy, I was the one who spent every weekend with Grandpa after Grandma died. I grocery shopped with him, cleaned his house, listened to his stories. When he pressed those keys into my palm, he whispered just 2 words, "You showed up." That was all he said, but now I think I know what he meant. My grandfather knew I could bring that place back to life. The others got things that looked valuable right away, but I got something with potential. He understood that worthless things only stay worthless if no one stays with them. Everyone said my inheritance was junk. Just sell it, my father insisted. Use whatever money you get for something sensible. So I proved my grandfather was right. I spent months on my hands and knees, scrubbing those floors until the original oak gleamed. I patched that roof myself, cleaned every mirror by hand, learned to fix that truck with YouTube tutorials. I taught classes to 3 students, then 5, then 20. That worthless building came alive. That's when everything changed. My brother Dylan suddenly became very interested. "You're thinking too small," he kept saying. "Let me help you expand this." When I refused, his tone shifted. "You need help with business planning." She's been different since the divorce. More isolated, he told our parents. Then Dylan did something that shattered my world. He petitioned the court for conservatorship, claiming I was incompetent to run my own business. So there I was, sitting at the defendant's table, watching my father straighten his navy tie as he took the witness stand. "Your Honor, the yoga studio and truck should belong to Dylan. Alexandra needs guidance. She's made poor choices, refusing family input, isolating herself from our support." My mother nodded from the gallery, actually clapping softly like the decision was already made. But Judge Ramirez stopped writing. "Ms. Thompson," she said, "do you have anything to say about these allegations?" That's when I pulled out my phone and played Dylan's recorded voice. "You're thinking too small. Let me help you expand this business." Then the threatening messages, "Sign now. You're too fragile to handle this alone." Finally, "We're petitioning for conservatorship. For your own protection." My family's faces went white. They thought I was still the grateful daughter who accepted whatever they gave me and stayed quiet. They had no idea I'd been documenting everything. What happens when your success becomes the reason your family tries to destroy you? If you're hearing this story, tell me in the comments. Where in the world are you listening from? Before we begin today's story, please don't forget to subscribe and hit the like button. Now let's get started. My name is Alexandra Thompson. I'm 62 years old. When my grandfather died last year, he left me his old yoga studio in Chicago. My brother Dylan inherited the family house worth $400,000. My cousins got cash inheritances of $50,000 each. I got a building with cracked floors, a leaking roof, and a rusty pickup truck. My parents' reactions told me everything I needed to know. They were thrilled about Dylan's inheritance. He deserves the house, my father said. He has a family to think about. Dylan has big dreams. But when they saw what I got, my mother just shook her head. Why would Dad leave you that old place? It's falling apart. You're responsible anyway, so you don't need much. It was the same thing I'd heard my whole life. Dylan was the son with dreams, I was the daughter who didn't need much. But I understood what my grandfather was really doing. While Dylan was building his law career and everyone else was too busy, I was the one who spent every weekend with Grandpa after Grandma died. I grocery shopped with him, cleaned his house, listened to his stories. When he pressed those keys into my palm, he whispered just 2 words, "You showed up." That was all he said, but now I think I know what he meant. My grandfather knew I could bring that place back to life. The others got things that looked valuable right away, but I got something with potential. He understood that worthless things only stay worthless if no one stays with them. Everyone said my inheritance was junk. Just sell it, my father insisted. Use whatever money you get for something sensible. So I proved my grandfather was right. I spent months on my hands and knees, scrubbing those floors until the original oak gleamed. I patched that roof myself, cleaned every mirror by hand, learned to fix that truck with YouTube tutorials. I taught classes to 3 students, then 5, then 20. That worthless building came alive. That's when everything changed. My brother Dylan suddenly became very interested. You're thinking too small, he kept saying. Let me help you expand this. When I refused, his tone shifted. You need help with business planning. She's been different since the divorce. More isolated, he told our parents. Then Dylan did something that shattered my world. He petitioned the court for conservatorship, claiming I was incompetent to run my own business. So there I was, sitting at the defendant's table, watching my father straighten his navy tie as he took the witness stand. Your Honor, the yoga studio and truck should belong to Dylan. Alexandra needs guidance. She's made poor choices, refusing family input, isolating herself from our support. My mother nodded from the gallery, actually clapping softly like the decision was already made. But Judge Ramirez stopped writing. Ms. Thompson, she said, do you have anything to say about these allegations? That's when I pulled out my phone and played Dylan's recorded voice. You're thinking too small. Let me help you expand this business. Then the threatening messages, sign now. You're too fragile to handle this alone. Finally, we're petitioning for conservatorship. For your own protection. My family's faces went white. They thought I was still the grateful daughter who accepted whatever they gave me and stayed quiet. They had no idea I'd been documenting everything. What happens when your success becomes the reason your family tries to destroy you? If you're hearing this story, tell me in the comments. Where in the world are you listening from? Before we begin today's story, please don't forget to subscribe and hit the like button. Now let's get started. The morning light cuts through tall windows of the Cook County Courthouse. Dust motes drift in golden beams. Alexandra Thompson sits alone at the defense table. Her fingers press into the wood grain. The surface feels cold against her palms. Her black cardigan hangs loose on her shoulders. She adjusts the collar twice. Her Medicare card sits tucked inside her wallet. The leather is worn soft from years of handling. 20 feet away, her father stands in the witness box. His tie is navy blue with small dots. He straightens it once, then speaks without hesitation. The yoga studio and the truck belong to Dylan. He has a family. He has a future. The words hit the air like stones dropped in still water. Alexandra's chest tightens. She feels her ribs expand and contract with each breath. Her hands remain folded on the table. Her mother sits in the second row. She wears a cream-colored blouse. The fabric rustles as she leans forward. Her hands come together in soft, quiet claps. As if a decision has already been signed in ink. Alexandra hears her own breathing. Slow and controlled. In through her nose, out through slightly parted lips. The air tastes like old wood and floor cleaner. The judge flips pages in a thick folder. Paper rustles. Pen scratches against paper. Then silence settles over the room like a blanket. She does not speak. Her voice stays locked behind her teeth. She lowers her eyes and lets the room believe what it wants to believe. The fluorescent lights hum above her head. Someone's shoe squeaks against linoleum. A radiator clicks in the corner. Alexandra's purse sits beside her left elbow. Inside, her pill organizer holds 7 small compartments. Each one labeled with a day of the week. Today is Wednesday. She took her blood pressure medication at 7 this morning with a glass of orange juice. Her father steps down from the witness box. His shoes make soft thuds against the carpet. He does not look at her as he passes. The lawyer across from her shuffles papers. His pen clicks open and shut. Open and shut. The sound echoes in the quiet space. Alexandra watches dust settle on the wooden rail in front of her. Particles floating down like tiny snow. Landing without sound. Her breathing stays even. She learned this years ago. How to keep air moving when everything else stops. How to stay present when the world tries to write your ending for you. The judge's glasses catch the light. They reflect small squares of brightness. She speaks in measured tones about property and family obligations, about what is fair and what is not. Alexandra's hands remain still. Her wedding ring catches no light. She removed it 3 years ago when the marriage ended. The tan line has faded now. Outside, Chicago traffic hums. Car horns in the distance. The rumble of buses stopping and starting. Life continuing as if this room does not exist. She thinks about the yoga studio. Cracked floors. A leaking roof. A truck with bald tires parked out back. Things other people call worthless. Her father's voice echoes in her memory. You're the responsible one. You don't need much. She had nodded then. At 16. At 26. At 36. Learning how to nod without swallowing your own voice. The judge sets her pen down. The sound is sharp and final. Alexandra lifts her eyes for the first time since her father began speaking. The room feels smaller now. The ceiling lower. The walls closer together. But something inside her chest expands. Not panic. Not fear. Something quieter. Something that has been waiting. She stands when the bailiff indicates court is adjourned. Her chair scrapes against the floor. Her cardigan falls back into place around her shoulders. The hallway outside smells like disinfectant and coffee from a vending machine. People move past her in small groups. Conversations about other cases, other families, other broken things being sorted into legal boxes. Alexandra walks toward the elevator. Her steps echo on marble floors. Behind her, she hears her parents talking to Dylan's lawyer. Their voices blend together. Planning, arranging, deciding. She does not turn around. The elevator doors open with a soft chime. She steps inside and presses the button for the ground floor. The walls are mirrored stainless steel. Her reflection looks back at her from 3 angles. Her hair is gray at the temples now. Lines around her eyes. 62 years of learning when to speak and when to stay silent. The elevator descends. Numbers light up above the door. 5, 4, 3. Her phone buzzes in her purse. A text message. She does not check it. Not yet. 2, 1. Ground floor. The doors slide open. The lobby is full of people. Lawyers in dark suits. Families clustered on benches. Children eating crackers from small packages. Alexandra walks through the metal detectors. Past the information desk. Through glass doors that open automatically. Outside, the November air is sharp and clean. It cuts through her cardigan and raises goosebumps on her arms. She breathes deeply. The city smells like exhaust and fallen leaves. Her car is parked 2 blocks away. A 10-year-old Honda with a scratch on the passenger door. She bought it used from a church member who was moving to Arizona. The walk gives her time to think. About the studio. About the truck. About what happens when people decide you're worth for you. Her phone buzzes again. Then again. At her car, she unlocks the door and sits behind the wheel. The seat adjusts to remember her position. The radio plays softly. A news program talking about interest rates and housing markets. She checks her phone. 3 messages. All from Dylan. Don't make this harder than it needs to be. Mom and Dad are just looking out for you. Call me. She sets the phone on the passenger seat without responding. Starts the engine. The heater begins to blow warm air across her feet. The drive home takes 20 minutes in midday traffic. Stop and go through neighborhoods she has known for decades. Past the grocery store where she shops every Thursday. Past the church where she used to sing in the choir. Her apartment building is red brick. Built in the 1940s. 5 stories with no elevator. She lives on the 3rd floor. 32 stairs from the lobby to her door. Inside, the apartment is quiet. Afternoon light slants through white curtains. The kitchen table holds yesterday's mail and a coffee mug with lipstick on the rim. She sets her purse on the counter. Hangs her cardigan on the back of a chair. Changes into comfortable shoes. The yoga studio is only 4 miles away. She could drive there now. Walk through the space her grandfather left her. Touch the walls he painted. Breathe the air that still holds his memory. Instead, she sits at the kitchen table. Spreads today's court documents across the surface. Reads each page carefully. Her grandfather's will. Clear and simple. The studio and truck left to her. No conditions. No restrictions. Dylan's petition. Claiming she is unfit to manage the property. Claiming family resources should be consolidated. Claiming concern for her well-being. Her parents' affidavits. Careful words about her divorce. Her job loss last year. Her need for guidance and protection. She reads until the words blur together. Until the light outside begins to fade. Then she folds the papers. Places them in a manila envelope. Writes today's date on the outside in careful handwriting. The apartment grows dark around her. She does not turn on the lights. Not yet. Outside her window, Chicago settles into evening. Streetlights flicker on. Kitchen windows glow yellow in neighboring buildings. People coming home from work. Making dinner. Living ordinary lives. Alexandra remains at the table. Thinking about words spoken for her. About futures decided without her voice. About the difference between being quiet and being silenced. Tomorrow, she will call the lawyer her friend Maria recommended. Tonight, she will sit with what happened. Let it settle like dust in morning light. Her hands rest flat on the table. Steady and still. For the first time in years, the silence belongs to her. The memory comes in fragments. Tampa, Florida. 15 years earlier. The kitchen table cluttered with papers that seemed to multiply each day. An SSA letter sits beside her mother's pill organizer. 7 plastic compartments, each one labeled in her mother's careful handwriting. Monday through Sunday. The white tablets for blood pressure. The small yellow ones for cholesterol. Overdue utility bills fan across the table like playing cards. Electric, water, gas. Red stamps mark some of them. Final notice. Service interruption warning. Alexandra folds laundry in the living room. Clean towels that smell like lavender fabric softener. Her hands work automatically, matching corners, creating neat stacks. The work her mother used to do before the arthritis made her fingers too stiff. Dylan laughs in the next room. Loud and careless. He claims the front seat when they drive anywhere. The better room when relatives visit. The louder future that everyone seems to expect. I'm thinking about law school, he announces at dinner. Dad says he knows someone at Northwestern. Their father nods. Cuts his steak with careful precision. We'll make it work. Alexandra continues eating. Her fork moves rice from one side of the plate to the other. She learned early not to ask what making it work meant. At 16, she hides cash inside an old prescription bag in her dresser drawer. $20 bills folded in half. Tens and fives mixed together. Money from babysitting the Peterson children down the street. From helping Mrs. Chen carry groceries up 3 flights of stairs. She counts it twice each week. On Wednesday nights after her parents go to bed. The bills feel soft between her fingers. Worn smooth by other hands. $43, $67, $89. She slides the bag back under her sweaters. Between the blue one with pearl buttons and the gray one that used to be her mother's. You're the responsible one, her mother says one afternoon. They stand together in the kitchen. Steam rises from a pot of soup on the stove. Chicken and vegetables. The smell fills the small space. You don't need much, her mother continues. She stirs the soup with a wooden spoon. The ladle scrapes against the bottom of the pot. Dylan has bigger dreams. Alexandra nods. The motion feels automatic now. Like breathing or blinking. She learned how to nod without swallowing her own words. At 17, she takes a job at the community college bookstore. 4 hours every weekday after school. Stacking textbooks. Operating the cash register. Helping professors find copies of reading lists. Her supervisor, Mrs. Rodriguez, has kind eyes behind thick glasses. She shows Alexandra how to process returns. How to balance the register at closing time. How to order books that students need for next semester. You have good hands for this work, Mrs. Rodriguez says. Careful hands. Alexandra saves half of each paycheck. The other half goes to groceries. To the electric bill when it reaches final notice. To the copay for her mother's doctor visits. No one asks her to contribute. No one demands she hand over her earnings. But the need sits in the house like another family member. Silent and persistent. Dylan's college applications spread across the dining room table. Essays printed on cream-colored paper. Transcripts in official envelopes. Application fees that add up to more than Alexandra makes in a month. Her father drives him to campus visits. Northwestern, University of Chicago, DePaul. They return with brochures and stories about dormitories and meal plans. Alexandra sits in her room. Algebra homework open on her desk. The sound of their excitement carries through thin walls. Her own college applications remain blank. tucked inside her backpack like secrets she's not ready to tell. Years pass. High school graduation comes and goes. Alexandra receives a small scholarship to the local community college. She studies business administration, takes classes on Tuesday and Thursday evenings. Dylan moves to Chicago, calls home every Sunday to report his progress. Law review, study groups, networking events that might lead to internships. Alexandra transfers to a 4-year university, takes out loans to cover tuition, works at the bookstore during the day, studies at night under a desk lamp that casts warm circles of light across her textbooks. Responsibility becomes habit. Silence becomes armor that protects her from expectations too heavy to carry. She learns to exist in the spaces between other people's dreams, to make herself useful without being noticed, to save money and hope that someday it will be enough. At 22, she moves to Chicago, a small apartment in Logan Square, close enough to Dylan that their parents feel better, far enough away that she can breathe without being watched. She finds work at a nonprofit, processing grant applications, managing donor databases, work that requires attention to detail, patience with numbers and systems. Her colleagues are kind. They invite her to lunch, include her in birthday celebrations, ask about her weekend plans. She smiles and participates, brings homemade cookies to office parties, stays late to help with urgent projects, makes herself indispensable in quiet ways. But she does not talk about Dylan's success, about her parents' pride in his achievements, about the way family conversations still center on his career, his marriage, his children who call her Aunt Alexandra but see her twice a year. The silence that began as protection evolves into something else, a choice rather than a burden, a way of holding space for herself in a world that seems to have already decided her place. At 35, she marries Robert, a gentle man who works in accounting, who listens when she speaks, who does not expect her to be anything other than herself. They buy a small house in Pilsen, plant tomatoes in the backyard, adopt a cat from the animal shelter, build a quiet life together. For 5 years, she believes this is enough. This small portion of happiness carved out from everything else. But marriages require more than kindness, more than compatibility. They need 2 whole people who can speak their truths to each other. Robert tries. He asks gentle questions about her family, about her dreams, about the parts of herself she keeps locked away. She answers carefully, offers small pieces of information like appetizers before a meal that never comes. The divorce is amicable. No children to consider, no property to divide beyond furniture and kitchen appliances. They hug goodbye on the front steps of the house they painted together. Alexandra moves back to an apartment, learns to cook for one person again, rediscovers the shape of her own life when no one else is watching. Her grandfather dies on a cold Tuesday in November. Harold Thompson, 87 years old, a man who spoke in complete sentences and believed in keeping promises. He had visited her new apartment once, sat at her small kitchen table, drank coffee from one of her good cups. "You showed up," he had said, his voice trembling slightly, age making his words precious. "When your grandmother was sick. When I needed help with the house. You showed up." She had not thought of it as showing up, just as what people do for family, for people they love. Now he is gone, and he has left her something no one expected. Keys pressed into her palm at the funeral home. A folded deed that smells like dust and ink. Property she had forgotten existed. The yoga studio is old. Built in the 1960s when the neighborhood was different. Hardwood floors that creak under footsteps. Mirrors along one wall. Windows that face east toward the lake. Her father waves it off at dinner after the funeral. Sell it. It's barely worth the land it sits on. He cuts his pie with efficient strokes. Apple filling oozes onto the plate. The truck probably doesn't even run anymore. Alexandra nods, but she does not agree. She drives to the studio the next morning, unlocks the door with keys that feel heavy in her hand. Inside, dust rises in golden columns. Light spills through windows that need washing. The air holds the scent of old wood and something else. Something that might be hope. She stands in the center of the room. Her footsteps echo on hollow floors. Her reflection multiplies in dirty mirrors. This is worthless, everyone will say. A burden. A liability. Something to be disposed of quickly and quietly. But Alexandra has spent decades learning to see value in overlooked things. In spaces between other people's attention. In the quiet corners where possibility waits. She locks the door behind her. Drives home through neighborhoods that blur together. Parks in front of her apartment building. That night, she sits at her kitchen table. The deed spread before her like a map to somewhere she has never been. For the first time in years, the silence feels like anticipation rather than absence. 6 months later, the studio begins to change. Not all at once. Not in ways that demand attention from people who have already dismissed its worth. Alexandra arrives each morning at 7:30. Before the neighborhood fully wakes. Before traffic builds on Western Avenue. While the light is still soft and forgiving. She brings supplies in small batches. A broom and dustpan from the dollar store. Cleaning supplies that smell like lemon and pine. A space heater for mornings when November wind cuts through loose window frames. The floors require careful attention. 60 years of footsteps and neglect have left their marks. She works on her hands and knees. Scrubbing in sections. Discovering the grain of oak beneath layers of accumulated damage. Her knees ache by 10 o'clock. Her back protests the angle of bending and reaching. But something settles in her chest as the wood begins to gleam. Something that feels like recognition. The mirrors prove more complicated. Years of humidity and temperature changes have created spots that resist ordinary cleaning. She researches solutions online. Vinegar in newspaper. Specialized glass cleaners. Techniques for removing film without damaging the surface. Each cleared section reveals more of the room. More of herself moving through the space. More light reflecting back from clean surfaces. The truck sits behind the building like a forgotten promise. A 1998 Ford pickup with bald tires and rust around the wheel wells. Paint faded from blue to gray blue to something closer to sky before rain. She turns the key. The engine coughs twice, then settles into an uneven idle. The radio crackles with static. The heater blows air that smells like old leaves and motor oil. But it runs. It moves forward when she presses the accelerator. Backward when she shifts into reverse. Functional despite appearances. At dinner the following Sunday, her father asks about the property. His tone suggests he expects a certain answer. I assume you've contacted a realtor by now. Alexandra cuts her roast beef with deliberate slowness. The knife slides through tender meat. Juice pools pink on white china. I'm fixing it up first. The words hang in the dining room air like smoke. Her mother's fork pauses halfway to her mouth. Dylan looks up from his phone. Fixing it up for what? Her father asks. His voice carries the weight of 40 years making family decisions. To use it. Silence settles over the table. Different from the comfortable quiet of shared meals. This silence has edges, boundaries, territory being marked. Her mother clears her throat. Alexandra, dear, you don't know anything about running a business. I can learn. Dylan sets down his phone. Gives her the look he has perfected over decades. Patient, slightly amused. The expression of someone explaining obvious facts to someone who cannot see them. Yoga studios require permits, insurance, marketing. You'd need to hire instructors. Build a client base. Handle bookkeeping and taxes. He counts each obstacle on his fingers. It's not something you just decide to do. Alexandra continues eating. Chews slowly. Swallows before speaking. Grandpa thought I could handle it. Grandpa was sentimental, her father says. His knife scrapes against porcelain. He left you something he couldn't bear to sell. That doesn't mean you have to keep it. She nods. The motion automatic. Expected. But underneath the agreement, something different moves. Something that has been growing in the quiet spaces of the studio. In the satisfaction of clean floors and functioning mirrors. After dinner, she helps with dishes. Dries glassware with careful attention. Places each piece back in its assigned location. Behaves like the responsible daughter who does not argue with sensible advice. But driving home, she takes a detour. Past the studio. Past the truck parked behind the building like a faithful animal waiting for work. The next morning arrives gray and cold. November asserting itself with wind that rattles windows and pushes dead leaves in circles across empty parking lots. Alexandra unlocks the studio door. Switches on the overhead lights. The fluorescent bulbs flicker twice before settling into steady brightness. She has been researching, reading articles about small business permits. about liability insurance for fitness facilities, about the demographics of her neighborhood and what services people actually need. The work is not simple, but it is not impossible either. She spreads papers across the floor where students will eventually practice. Application forms, insurance quotes, a hand-drawn floor plan showing where equipment might go, where a small desk could fit for check-ins and payments. Her phone buzzes. A text from Dylan. Called about property assessments. The lot is worth maybe $40,000. Building probably needs to be torn down. Happy to help you through the sale process. She reads the message twice. Sets the phone aside without responding. The building does not need to be torn down. It needs attention, investment, someone willing to see possibility where others see problems. That afternoon, she drives to the bank. Sits across from a loan officer who looks young enough to be her nephew. Explains her plans with careful precision. You have good credit, he says, reviewing her application on a computer screen. Steady employment history, but the property value won't support much of a loan. And yoga studios. He shrugs apologetically. High failure rate. She nods, thanks him for his time. Drives home through rush hour traffic that moves like cold honey. That evening, she opens her laptop. Reviews her savings account balance. The number that represents 20 years of careful spending. Of choosing generic brands and repairing clothes instead of replacing them. Of vacations not taken and dinners not eaten in restaurants. Enough to begin, not enough to finish, but enough to start something that feels more like choice than resignation. Her phone rings, her mother's voice, warm with concern. Dylan told me about your meeting at the bank. The words careful, loving, worried. We just don't want to see you get hurt. Alexandra sits at her kitchen table. The same table where she used to count babysitting money. Where she filled out college applications that led to careful, practical choices. I know, she says. And she does know. This comes from love, from experience with disappointment, from watching people make mistakes that could have been avoided. But love can be its own kind of prison. Care can become control without anyone noticing the transition. Why don't you come for coffee tomorrow, her mother suggests. We can look at some real estate listings together. Help you find something good to invest in instead. Okay, Alexandra agrees. Because agreeing is easier than explaining something she doesn't fully understand herself. But the next morning, she doesn't drive to her parents' house. She drives to the studio instead. Inside, morning light streams through clean windows. Reflects off polished mirrors. Warms floors that smell like lemon oil and possibility. She sits in the center of the room. Legs crossed. Back straight. Breathing in rhythm with her heartbeat. For 46 years, she has been the responsible one. The one who doesn't need much. The one who makes things work for other people. Maybe it's time to make something work for herself. The silence in the room feels different now. Not empty. Full. Rich with potential that exists only if someone is willing to risk believing in it. Her phone buzzes. Another text from Dylan. Mom says you missed coffee. Everything okay? She types back carefully. Everything is fine. Working on something. The response comes quickly. Need help? She looks around the studio. At the floors she cleaned by hand. At the mirrors she polished section by section. At the space that exists because she decided it was worth saving. No, she types. I think I've got this. Outside, November wind rattles loose gutters. Inside, the studio holds steady against the weather. Solid despite its age, valuable despite appearances, like some people she knows. March arrives with surprising gentleness. Snow melts into running gutters. Tree branches show the first green hints of coming leaves. The studio's east windows catch early morning light that feels warmer than it has in months. Alexandra has been working steadily. Quietly. The permits approved after 3 visits to City Hall. Insurance secured through a company that specializes in small fitness facilities. A business license printed on official paper and framed beside the front door. The floors gleam under new lighting. Track lighting installed by an electrician who charged reasonable rates and worked around her schedule. Mirrors repositioned to maximize natural light. A sound system that plays gentle music from speakers mounted in corners. Yoga mats line one wall. 20 purple mats purchased from a wholesale supplier in Indiana. Props stored in wooden cubbies she built herself following YouTube tutorials. Blocks and straps and bolsters arranged with the same care she once gave to library shelves and retail displays. A handwritten schedule is taped beside the front door. Morning classes at 7 and 9. Evening sessions at 6 and 7:30. Beginner workshops on Saturday afternoons. The first students arrive tentatively. Mrs. Chen from down the street. Maria from her old job who has been complaining about back pain. A young mother who pushes a stroller past the studio every morning and finally stops to ask about childcare during classes. 5 students become 10. 10 becomes 15. Word spreads through the neighborhood like a slow, warm tide. The immigrant families who run the corner market. Retired teachers from the elementary school. College students who can afford $10 drop in classes but not expensive gym memberships. Alexandra photographs everything. The first full class. A student's improvement over weeks of practice. A handwritten thank you note from someone whose anxiety has improved with regular meditation. She emails each photo to herself. Creates digital folders organized by month and activity. Builds a record of something growing. Something real. Dylan arrives unannounced on a Thursday in April. She sees him through the front window. Expensive suit despite the casual visit. Phone pressed to his ear as he examines the building from the sidewalk. She continues teaching. Guides 8 students through a sequence of poses designed for flexibility and strength. Her voice remains calm and instructional. But her awareness splits between the bodies in the room and the figure waiting outside. Take your time coming back to seated position, she instructs. Honor where your body is today. The students move slowly, grateful for permission to go at their own pace. Several are over 60, others dealing with injuries or chronic conditions. Everyone learning to work within their limits rather than against them. Dylan enters as students are rolling up their mats. He waits near the door. Observes without commenting. His presence changes the energy in the room like a drop of food coloring in clear water. Nice class, he says after the last student leaves. He walks the perimeter of the room. Tests the spring in the floor with small bounces. You've really done something here. His tone suggests surprise, as if he expected failure and found competence instead. Thanks. She wipes down props with antibacterial solution. Returns blocks to their designated spaces. Maintains her routine despite the disruption. We should talk about expanding this, Dylan continues. His eyes scan the room with a different focus now. Not assessing problems but calculating possibilities. Maybe add morning classes. Market to the lunch crowd downtown. I know people in corporate wellness. Alexandra stops moving. I could help with the business side. Marketing. Financial planning. You're doing great with the teaching part, but running a business requires different skills. He pulls out his phone. Shows her a screen full of numbers and graphs. I've been looking at profit margins for boutique fitness. With the right approach, this could be seriously profitable. She sets down the cleaning spray. Faces him directly for the first time since he arrived. I'm not looking for serious profits. Why not? His voice carries genuine confusion. You have something good here. Why not make it really successful? Because really successful means something different to him than it does to her. Really successful means growth targets and expansion plans. Marketing campaigns and corporate partnerships. The transformation of something personal into something profitable. She looks around the studio. At walls painted the color of morning sky. At plants she waters every Tuesday and Friday. At a space that feels like an extension of herself rather than a business that happens to belong to her. I'm happy with how it is, she says. Dylan slides his phone back into his jacket pocket. Studies her face as if she's speaking a language he doesn't quite understand. Alexandra, you could franchise this. Open locations in Lincoln Park. Lakeview. Build something really substantial. The word substantial hangs between them, implying that what exists now is somehow insufficient. Temporary. A practice run for something more serious. I don't want to franchise it. His expression shifts. Patience giving way to concern. The look he wore when they were children and she made choices that seemed obviously wrong to him. You're thinking too small, he says gently. This is good work, but you could do so much more with it. After he leaves, Alexandra sits in the empty studio. Late afternoon light slants through western windows. The room holds the lingering energy of students who practiced here. People finding their balance, learning to breathe through difficulty, discovering strength they didn't know they possessed. Her phone buzzes. A text from Dylan. Talked to mom and dad. They agree this has potential. Let's set up a meeting to discuss partnership options. Then another message. You're doing something wonderful here. Let's help you do it bigger. A third message arrives before she can respond to the first two. Call me tonight. We should move on this while the momentum is good. She reads each message twice. Sets the phone aside without responding. Locks the studio and walks to her car parked behind the building. The truck still sits beside the dumpster. Engine running better now after basic maintenance. New tires that grip the road with confidence. A vehicle that serves its purpose without demanding admiration. At home, she spreads papers across her kitchen table. Bank statements showing steady, modest income from class fees. Insurance policies with her name listed as sole proprietor. A lease agreement signed in her careful handwriting. Documentation of something that belongs entirely to her. Something she built with her own hands and imagination. Something that works exactly as intended. Her phone rings. Dylan's name on the screen. She lets it go to voicemail. Then listens to the message while heating leftover soup for dinner. Hey, just wanted to follow up on our conversation. I've been thinking about this all afternoon. You've created something really special, and I want to help you take it to the next level. Call me back when you get this. The next level. As if where she stands now is somehow incomplete. As if success can only be measured in expansion and multiplication. She eats dinner slowly. Soup made from vegetables she grows in containers on her balcony. Bread baked in her own oven. Simple food that nourishes without complications. Outside her window, the neighborhood settles into evening rhythms. Children called in from playgrounds. Kitchen lights warming apartment windows. People living ordinary lives that feel extraordinary to the people living them. Alexandra turns off her phone. Runs a bath with lavender salts. Soaks in water hot enough to dissolve the tension that has been building since Dylan's visit. Tomorrow there will be morning classes. Students who arrive early to claim their favorite spots. People who trust her to guide them through movements that challenge and restore them. That is enough. More than enough. It is exactly what she intended to create. The silence in her bathroom feels like peace rather than emptiness. The sound of her own breathing in her own space. The rhythm of a life that fits the person living it. She has learned to measure success differently now. Not in numbers or growth rates or expansion plans. But in the quality of attention she can offer. In the steadiness of her own foundation. In the simple fact of showing up for something she believes in. Even when other people think she should want more. The envelope arrives on a Tuesday morning in May. Thick paper. Legal letterhead. Her name typed in formal black letters across cream-colored stationery. Alexandra sets it beside her coffee cup. Finishes reading an article about breathing techniques for anxiety. Checks the weather forecast for the day's classes. Maintains her morning routine despite the weight of unopened correspondence on her kitchen table. When she finally slides her finger under the seal, the papers inside feel heavier than their actual weight. Legal language that transforms family relationships into adversarial proceedings. Dylan's name listed as petitioner. Her parents' signatures on supporting documents. Petition for asset protection and family intervention, the header reads. Below that, paragraphs of careful accusations. Concern for her mental state following divorce. Questions about her ability to manage financial responsibilities. Recommendations for family oversight of inherited property. She reads each page twice. The language is gentle but thorough. Loving but devastating. They paint a picture of someone fragile. Someone who needs guidance. Someone whose recent choices indicate diminished capacity for sound judgment. Her hands remain steady as she sets the papers aside. Her breathing stays even and controlled. But something cold settles in her chest. The recognition that love and control can wear identical faces. At the studio that morning, she teaches with unusual focus. Guides students through poses that require complete attention. Balance that exists only in the present moment. Strength that builds slowly through consistent practice. Find your center, she instructs. Trust what you feel rather than what you think you should feel. After class, she sits alone in the empty studio. Sunlight streams through windows she cleaned by hand. Reflects off mirrors that show her clearly. A woman who knows her own mind. Who has built something valuable with careful attention. Her phone buzzes. A text from her mother. We need to talk. Can you come for dinner tonight? Then another from her father. This is about protecting you. Please don't make it harder than necessary. Dylan sends a longer message. I know this seems harsh, but we're genuinely worried. The studio is nice, but you're not thinking long term. Let us help you make better decisions. She screenshots each message, saves them in a folder she creates specifically for this purpose. Evidence of concern that feels more like invasion. That afternoon, she drives to a law office in Logan Square. James Whitaker comes recommended by Maria, who went through a difficult custody battle 2 years ago. A man who specializes in family law and believes that competent adults should be allowed to make their own mistakes. His office is small but organized. Books line wooden shelves. A desk scattered with papers that suggest active casework. No intimidating diplomas or awards designed to impress. Just functional space for solving problems. Alexandra spreads her documents across his desk. The petition. Bank statements showing steady income. Photographs of the studio in operation. Insurance policies. Business permits. Tax returns from the last 3 years. Your family is concerned about your judgment, James says after reviewing everything. His voice is neutral, observational rather than judgmental. They believe you need protection from financial decisions you're not qualified to make. Do you think they're right? He looks at her directly. Studies her face as if measuring something invisible. You're sitting in my office with organized documentation of a functioning business. You're dressed appropriately. You're speaking coherently about complex legal issues. What do you think? She thinks about Dylan's surprise at the studio's success. About her father's assumption that she would sell the property without question. About her mother's gentle suggestion that she find something safer to invest in. I think they love me, she says finally. But they've been making decisions for me for so long that they can't imagine I might make different ones. James nods. Love and respect aren't always the same thing. He explains the legal process. How family members can petition for conservatorship under certain circumstances. How the burden of proof lies with the petitioners to demonstrate actual incapacity. How competent adults have the right to make choices others consider unwise. The good news is you have substantial evidence of competency, he continues. Running a business successfully. Managing finances responsibly. No history of mental health crises or substance abuse issues. What's the bad news? Family court judges err on the side of caution. If your family presents a convincing case for concern, the judge might order evaluation or temporary supervision while things get sorted out. Alexandra absorbs this information without visible reaction. But inside, something hardens. The realization that she will have to prove her right to live her own life. What do I need to do? James pulls out a yellow legal pad. Writes notes in precise handwriting. Document everything. Every business transaction. Every student interaction. Every decision that demonstrates sound judgment. Build a record that shows pattern of competency over time. She drives home through afternoon traffic that moves like thick soup. Radio plays soft jazz that fails to ease the tension building behind her eyes. At her apartment, she opens her laptop. Creates new folders for organizing evidence. Screenshots of positive student reviews. Photos of classes in progress. Email correspondence with vendors and instructors that shows reasonable business communication. She prints bank statements going back 2 years. Highlights deposits that show growing income from the studio. Marks regular bill payments that demonstrate financial responsibility. Her phone rings. Her mother's number on the screen. Alexandra, please come to dinner. We can work this out as a family. Her voice carries genuine distress. The sound of someone who believes she's preventing harm rather than causing it. I can't tonight, Alexandra says. I have evening classes. Cancel them. This is more important than yoga. The words hang in the air like smoke. This is more important than yoga. More important than the thing she built. More important than her students who depend on consistent instruction. More important than her own choices about how to spend her time. I don't cancel classes unless I'm sick, she says quietly. Alexandra. Her mother's voice breaks slightly. Please don't make this a fight. We're trying to help you. After ending the call, Alexandra sits at her kitchen table. The legal papers spread before her like a map of a country she never wanted to visit. Territory where family love becomes legal strategy. She thinks about her grandfather. About keys pressed into her palm with shaking hands. About his belief that showing up mattered more than dramatic gestures. Maybe the best response to being underestimated is simply to continue being exactly who you are. She locks the legal documents in a metal file box, drives to the studio for evening classes, unlocks the door for students who arrive early to claim their preferred spots. For the next 2 hours, she guides people through sequences of movement and breath, helps them find balance in their bodies and minds, offers the kind of steady presence that can only come from someone who knows her own ground. After the last student leaves, she sits in the empty studio. Phone silenced, mind clear. Tomorrow she will continue building evidence of her competence. Tonight she will rest in the certainty that some things cannot be measured by other people's standards. The silence around her feels like strength rather than isolation. The sound of someone who has learned the difference between being quiet and being silenced. The courtroom in July feels different from the one in November. Same fluorescent lights, same wooden benches, same weight of formal proceedings designed to determine other people's futures. But Alexandra sits differently now. Spine straight without tension, hands folded without nervousness. 7 months of running her own business have changed the shape of her confidence. James Whitaker arranges documents on the table beside her. Bank statements organized by month. Student testimonials printed on clean paper. Photographs that show the studio's transformation from empty space to thriving community. Across the aisle, Dylan confers with his lawyer, a woman in a navy suit who specializes in elder care and family protection. Behind them, Alexandra's parents sit together. Her mother wears the pearl necklace she reserves for important occasions. Her father's tie is the same navy blue with small dots that he wore 8 months ago. Judge Ramirez enters promptly at 9 o'clock. A woman in her 50s with silver hair and reading glasses that catch the overhead lighting. She reviews the case file while court officials organize papers and adjust microphones. This is a petition for conservatorship, she begins. Mr. Dylan Thompson requests appointment as guardian for his sister, Alexandra Thompson, citing concerns about her mental state and financial decision-making capacity. The words sound different when spoken aloud in official language. More serious, more consequential, as if family worry has been transformed into legal necessity. Dylan's lawyer stands first, presents her case with practiced precision, describes Alexandra's divorce 3 years ago, her period of unemployment, her decision to invest savings in what family members consider a risky business venture. Mr. Thompson's concern stems from his sister's recent pattern of isolating herself from family support, she explains to the judge. Making significant financial decisions without consultation, refusing offers of assistance and guidance. She calls Dylan to testify. He walks to the witness stand with the confidence of someone who has never doubted his right to be heard. Takes the oath with steady voice and serious expression. I love my sister, he begins. But she's been making choices that worry all of us. The yoga studio seemed like a nice hobby at first. But now she's invested her entire savings. Refuses to discuss business planning or financial projections. His voice carries genuine concern. The tone of someone who has watched a family member make mistakes and felt powerless to intervene. Has she asked for your help? The judge asks. She doesn't ask for help from anyone anymore. That's part of what concerns us. She used to be very collaborative, very open to family input. Now she makes major decisions alone. Alexandra's mother testifies next. Describes her daughter's previous reliance on family guidance, her responsible nature, her tendency to defer to others' expertise in financial matters. She was always so careful, her mother says. So thoughtful about major decisions. This sudden independence seems out of character. The word independence hangs in the courtroom air like an accusation, as if autonomy itself indicates diminished capacity. James stands when it's time for Alexandra's defense. Spreads documents across the podium with deliberate care. Each piece of evidence arranged for maximum impact. Your Honor, we have extensive documentation of Ms. Thompson's business competency over the past 8 months. He holds up bank statements. Consistent income growth, responsible expense management, regular tax payments and permit renewals. He introduces the first piece of evidence. A recording made during one of Dylan's visits to the studio. Alexandra's phone had been recording a voice memo about class scheduling when Dylan arrived unexpectedly. His voice fills the courtroom through speakers designed for official proceedings. clear and distinct despite the casual setting. You're thinking too small. This is good work, but you could do so much more with it. Then Alexandra's response, equally clear, I'm happy with how it is. Dylan's voice again, why not franchise this? Open locations in Lincoln Park. Build something really substantial. The recording continues for 3 minutes. Dylan's escalating insistence on expansion. Alexandra's calm resistance to pressure. Her clear articulation of her own goals and boundaries. This demonstrates Ms. Thompson's ability to think independently and communicate her decisions clearly, James explains. Even when facing family pressure to make choices she considers inappropriate. He calls Maria Santos to testify. Alexandra's former co-worker and current student. A woman who has known her for 5 years and observed her transformation from office employee to business owner. Alexandra is the most organized person I know, Maria says. Her classes start on time. Her billing is accurate. Students trust her completely. She's built something really valuable in our neighborhood. The judge asks about Alexandra's mental state. Whether Maria has observed any signs of confusion or impaired judgment. The opposite, Maria responds. She's clearer than she's ever been. More confident. More sure of what she wants to accomplish. James introduces text messages from Dylan. Screenshots of conversations where he pressures Alexandra to accept family involvement in business decisions. Messages that escalate from suggestions to demands to threats of legal intervention. This pattern demonstrates that Ms. Thompson's family disapproves of her choices, not that she lacks capacity to make them, James argues. Competent adults have the right to make decisions their families consider unwise. Judge Ramirez reviews the evidence with careful attention. Reads bank statements. Studies photographs of students in classes. Examines business permits and insurance policies. Then she calls Alexandra to testify. The walk to the witness stand feels longer than it actually is. Each step echoes on marble floors. The courtroom holds the attention of people who care about her but disagree about what caring means. She takes the oath with steady voice. Sits with straight posture that reflects months of teaching proper alignment. Faces the judge directly. Ms. Thompson, can you describe your decision-making process regarding the yoga studio? Alexandra speaks clearly. Explains her research into business requirements. Her gradual approach to expansion. Her conservative financial planning that prioritized sustainability over rapid growth. I understand my family's concerns, she says. But I believe I've demonstrated consistent good judgment in building something that serves my community and supports me financially. The judge asks about her rejection of family input. Whether she considered their advice before making major decisions. I listen to their concerns, Alexandra responds. But I make my own choices based on what I think is best for my life and my business. Are you open to family involvement in future decisions? Alexandra pauses. Considers the question carefully. I'm open to their support and encouragement. But I'm not willing to give anyone else authority over my choices. Judge Ramirez nods. Makes notes on the case file. The courtroom settles into silence that feels heavy with pending decision. This court finds no evidence of diminished capacity or impaired judgment, she announces finally. Ms. Thompson has demonstrated consistent competency in managing her financial affairs and business operations. She looks directly at Dylan and their parents. Family concern, while well-intentioned, is not grounds for conservatorship. Competent adults have the right to make choices their families consider unwise. The petition is denied. Court adjourned. Alexandra remains seated as people file out around her. Dylan stops beside her chair. His expression carries disappointment and confusion in equal measure. This isn't over, he says quietly. We still think you need help. She looks up at him. This man who shares her childhood memories and family history. Who genuinely believes he knows what's best for her. I know you do, she says. But I'm not asking for help anymore. Outside the courthouse, July heat rises from concrete sidewalks. Traffic moves through downtown Chicago with the rhythm of ordinary life continuing around extraordinary moments. Alexandra walks to her car parked 2 blocks away. Her phone buzzes with text messages she doesn't check. Calls from family members she isn't ready to answer. For now, she drives to the studio. Unlocks the door for afternoon classes. Students who arrive expecting consistency and finding it. The judgment belongs to her now. officially and legally, the right to succeed or fail on her own terms. In the quiet space between classes, she sits on the floor where she learned to trust her own balance. Breathes in rhythm with her heartbeat. Listens to the sound of her own life moving forward. August brings an unexpected invitation. Her cousin Rebecca's wedding in Milwaukee. A formal envelope addressed in calligraphy. Alexandra Thompson and guest requested for an afternoon ceremony followed by dinner and dancing. She almost declines. Family gatherings have become complicated since the court hearing. Conversations that stop when she enters rooms. Careful politeness that feels more isolating than honest conflict. But Rebecca called personally. Voice warm with genuine affection rather than obligation. "I know things are weird with your parents and Dylan right now," Rebecca had said. "But I want you there. You're important to me." So Alexandra drives north on a Saturday morning in late August. Windows down despite the heat. Radio playing quietly as farmland rolls past on both sides of the highway. The ceremony takes place in a small church surrounded by maple trees. White wooden building with a bell tower and stained glass windows that cast colored light across wooden pews. Alexandra sits near the back. Close enough to participate but far enough to avoid forced conversation with family members who still look at her with confusion and concern. Her parents sit 3 rows ahead. Her father's shoulders straight in a charcoal suit. Her mother wearing lavender silk that rustles when she turns to greet other relatives. They nod politely when they see Alexandra but maintain careful distance. Dylan arrives just before the ceremony begins. Navy suit and polished shoes. He slides into the pew beside their parents without looking back to acknowledge her presence. The service is beautiful. Traditional vows spoken with obvious sincerity. Music played by Rebecca's best friend on an acoustic guitar. Sunlight streaming through windows that haven't changed in 50 years. During the reception, Alexandra finds herself at a table with cousins she hasn't seen in years. College professors and social workers and small business owners. People who ask genuine questions about the yoga studio and listen to her answers with interest rather than judgment. "I've always wanted to try yoga," Rebecca's sister mentions. "But I'm not flexible enough." Alexandra smiles. Flexibility isn't a requirement, it's a result. You start where you are and work from there. The conversation flows easily. Stories about teaching challenging students. About building community in urban neighborhoods. About the satisfaction of work that feels aligned with personal values. Across the reception hall, she notices her family clustered together. Dylan gesturing as he explains something to their parents. Her mother nodding with the expression she wears when receiving important information. They're talking about her, about the court case, about their continued concerns and future strategies. The conversation she cannot hear but recognizes from 30 years of similar family discussions. After dinner, during the dancing portion of the evening, Dylan approaches her table. He's removed his suit jacket, loosened his tie, had enough wine to soften his usual controlled presentation. "Can we talk?" he asks. They walk outside together. The church parking lot is quiet except for music drifting through open windows. August air still warm despite the setting sun. "I want you to know this isn't personal," Dylan begins. "I genuinely think you need help making better decisions." Alexandra leans against her car. Metal still warm from hours of sitting in the sun. "What kind of help?" "Financial planning, long-term strategy. You can't just operate a business by instinct forever." She looks at him in the fading light. This man who has been solving her problems since they were children. Who cannot imagine that she might not need or want his solutions anymore. "The business is working," she says simply. "For now. But what about 5 years from now? 10 years? You have no growth plan. No retirement savings. No backup strategy if the studio fails." His words carry the weight of legitimate concern. The practical worries of someone who thinks systematically about future risks and mitigation strategies. But underneath the concern lies an assumption she no longer accepts. That her way of thinking is insufficient. That her approach to planning is somehow incomplete. "I might fail," she agrees. "That's my choice to make." Dylan's expression shifts. Frustration replacing patience. "Why would you choose to risk failure when you could choose to succeed more safely?" Because safety isn't the only value that matters. Because controlled success sometimes costs more than it's worth. Because some risks lead to discoveries that careful planning cannot access. She doesn't say any of this. The explanation would require conversations they're not ready to have about autonomy and trust and different definitions of success. Instead, she opens her car door. I should get back to Chicago. Early class tomorrow. Alexandra. His voice carries genuine distress. We're on the same side here. She pauses, looks at him across the roof of her car. No, we're not. You're on the side of protecting me from my own choices. I'm on the side of making them. The drive home takes 2 hours through darkness punctuated by small towns. Radio stations fade in and out as she crosses county lines. Miles of thinking time about family and loyalty and the difference between love and control. At home, she checks her phone for the first time since morning. 3 missed calls from her mother. A voicemail she plays while changing out of her wedding clothes. I hope you had a good time at Rebecca's wedding. Your father and I would like to take you to lunch next week. We want to discuss some options for moving forward as a family. Moving forward as a family. Code for new strategies to address what they still see as her problematic independence. Alexandra deletes the message, turns off her phone, runs a bath with lavender salts and sinks into water hot enough to dissolve the tension of forced politeness and careful conversations. Tomorrow there will be morning classes. Students who arrive expecting instruction and finding it. People who trust her to guide them through movements that challenge and strengthen them. Tonight she rests in the certainty that some relationships require distance in order to remain relationships at all. The silence in her bathroom feels like relief rather than isolation. The sound of her own breathing in her own space. The rhythm of a life that finally fits the person living it. Outside her window, Chicago settles into evening rhythms that have nothing to do with family expectations or legal strategies. Kitchen lights warming apartment windows. People living ordinary lives that feel extraordinary to the people living them. Alexandra dries her hair slowly. Chooses clothes for tomorrow's classes. Performs small acts of care that acknowledge her right to plan her own future. The court hearing established her legal independence. But emotional independence requires daily practice. The ongoing choice to trust her own judgment even when people she loves disagree with her choices. She sets her alarm for 6 o'clock. Early enough to arrive at the studio before students. To unlock the door on another day of work that feeds her spirit as well as her bank account. In the quiet moments before sleep, she thinks about the wedding ceremony. About vows spoken with conviction despite uncertain futures. About the courage required to commit publicly to something you believe in. Marriage isn't the only relationship that requires that kind of courage. Building a life requires it too. September arrives with crisp edges and golden light that slants through the studio's east windows differently than it did in spring. Alexandra unlocks the door each morning to find familiar rhythms waiting for her. Mats arranged in precise rows. Props organized in wooden cubbies. Sound system ready to play the gentle music that helps students focus on breath and movement rather than outside concerns. But something has shifted in the quality of attention. Both hers and theirs. Students arrive earlier now, stay longer after class ends. Conversations that begin with questions about poses and breathing expand into discussions about work. Stress and family challenges and the difficulty of finding balance in complicated lives. Maria brings her teenage daughter. A girl who slouches through the first few classes but gradually straightens her spine and lifts her chin as weeks pass. Mrs. Chen invites her neighbor. An elderly man recovering from surgery who needs gentle movement to rebuild strength. He progresses from chair poses to standing sequences over the course of 2 months. The young mother who used to push her stroller past the windows now brings her toddler inside. The child sits quietly on a blanket while her mother practices, sometimes copying poses with the serious concentration that only small children can maintain. Each person carries their own story into the studio. Their own reasons for seeking something that conventional exercise cannot provide. Alexandra has learned to hold space for all of it without trying to fix or solve or improve anyone else's experience. Her own practice has deepened as well. Not just the physical poses but the mental discipline required to remain present with what is rather than what might be or should be. She teaches now from a place of genuine confidence rather than careful preparation. Responds to students' needs in the moment rather than following predetermined plans. Adjusts sequences based on who shows up and what they seem to need. This is what competence looks like, she realizes. Not the ability to control outcomes but the willingness to respond skillfully to whatever arises. The business grows steadily without dramatic expansion. 20 students become 30. 30 becomes 40. Word spreads through the neighborhood like slow water finding its natural course. She hires Sarah, a young instructor who needs teaching hours for certification. Adds weekend workshops for beginners. Offers private sessions for people dealing with injuries or anxiety. The financial records show modest but consistent profit. Enough to pay her own salary and Sarah's hourly rate. Enough to maintain the space and replace equipment as needed. Enough to feel sustainable rather than precarious. Dylan calls in October. His voice careful and neutral over the phone. I wanted to check how things are going with the studio. Things are good, she says. She's reorganizing the supply closet while they talk. Counting blocks and straps and bolsters to determine what needs to be replaced before winter classes begin. Mom mentioned you hired someone to help teach. Sarah. She's excellent with beginners. Silence on the phone. The space where Dylan usually offers suggestions or asks probing questions about her business planning process. That's good, he says finally. Growth is important, but it's not growth in the way he means it. Not expansion for its own sake or profit maximization or market domination. Just organic development that serves people rather than abstract business goals. How's your practice? He asks. A question that surprises her with its focus on her experience rather than her strategy. Stronger than it's ever been. Another pause. Then, I'm glad it's working out for you. Not the grudging acknowledgement she expected. Something closer to genuine acceptance. As if he's finally beginning to understand that her version of success might be different from his without being wrong. The conversation ends without conflict or agenda items or suggestions for improvement. Just a brother checking on his sister's well-being and finding that she's actually well. In November, Rebecca visits from Milwaukee. She takes an afternoon class and stays afterward to help Alexandra organize props and clean mirrors. You seem different, Rebecca observes. She sprays glass cleaner on reflective surfaces while Alexandra sweeps the floor with careful attention to corners where dust accumulates. Different how? More yourself, I guess. Like you're finally living in your own life instead of visiting it. The phrase resonates through Alexandra's chest like a bell being struck. Living in your own life instead of visiting it. She considers this while they work in comfortable silence. For 46 years, she had been a thoughtful guest in her own existence. Careful not to take up too much space. Grateful for what was offered. Polite about desires that might inconvenience others. Now she inhabits her days with the confidence of someone who belongs exactly where she is. Evening classes in November require artificial lighting as daylight disappears earlier each week. But the studio feels warm despite the cooling weather. Heated by the collective energy of people working toward greater flexibility and strength. During the final relaxation of Thursday's 7 o'clock class, Alexandra guides students through a meditation on gratitude. Not forced positivity but genuine appreciation for what exists in this moment. Notice what you can feel grateful for today, she suggests. Her voice soft enough to be heard without disrupting the peace that has settled over the room. Without needing to change anything or fix anything. Just acknowledging what is already good. Students lie still on their mats. Some with eyes closed. Others gazing softly at the ceiling. All breathing in rhythm with their own hearts rather than external demands. Alexandra feels her own gratitude rise like warm water. For this room that holds them safely. For students who trust her guidance. For the steady rhythm of work that feels aligned with her deepest values. For the courage to disappoint people in service of becoming herself. After class ends and students gather their mats and props, Alexandra sits alone in the quiet studio. November darkness beyond the windows. Soft lighting that creates more warmth than brightness. Her phone buzzes. A text from her mother. The first direct communication in weeks. Saw Maria downtown. She said wonderful things about your classes. I'm proud of what you've built. Not agreement with her choices. Not enthusiasm for her methods. But acknowledgement that something worthwhile has emerged from decisions they initially opposed. Alexandra reads the message twice before responding. Thank you, that means a lot. Simple words that carry the weight of relationship slowly healing. Not returning to what it was but becoming something new. something based on respect rather than protection. She turns off the studio lights, locks the door behind her, walks to her car through air that smells like wood smoke and approaching winter. The drive home takes her through neighborhoods where lights glow in apartment windows. People cooking dinner, children doing homework at kitchen tables, families navigating the ordinary challenges of living together with grace and patience. At her apartment, Alexandra heats leftover soup made from vegetables she grows in containers on her balcony. Reads while she eats. A book about meditation practices in different cultures. Ways people have learned to find peace within complexity. Her phone remains on but silent. Available for genuine emergencies but not hostage to other people's anxieties about her choices. Later, she sits by her bedroom window with a cup of herbal tea. Steam rising from the mug in visible spirals. The city settling into evening rhythms that have nothing to do with her family's expectations or legal strategies. Tomorrow there will be morning classes. People who arrive expecting instruction and finding it. Students who trust her to guide them through movements that challenge and restore them simultaneously. Tonight she rests in the certainty that some things cannot be measured by other people's standards. That success can be quiet and personal and no less real for being unconventional. The silence around her feels like contentment rather than isolation. The sound of someone who has learned to distinguish between being alone and being lonely. Between independence and disconnection. Outside her window, Chicago continues its ancient rhythm of people making homes in small spaces. Building lives that fit the shapes of their actual desires rather than inherited expectations. Alexandra finishes her tea slowly. Savors the warmth spreading through her chest. Performs small acts of care that acknowledge her right to plan her own future and trust her own judgment about what feels sustainable. Life doesn't end just because it breaks once. What falls apart can be the very place where we learn to stand again. If this story gave even a small moment of strength to someone out there, then everything I went through means something today. If this resonated with you, please like and subscribe, and share a piece of your own story in the comments below. Your words might become the seed of the next chapter we create together. Thank you for spending